On this week's Midlife Ramble, I'm going to be talking about our changing menopausal body. I'm not going to focus too much on the nutrition this week, but I'm going to talk about what we know about why our body changes on a physiological level and so much more. So go and grab your nice cup of tea and I'll see you in a minute. Welcome back everyone to the Midlife Ramble. Have you noticed something different? I'm not calling it the midweek ramble or the midweek midlife ramble because I kept getting my knickers in a twist over it. I'm just going to call it the midlife ramble, and that's because you answered my question when I asked out to you and reached out to you, and you said that just made so much more sense. And the fact that I post it midweek is here there. And also I might be late posting it sometimes, so the midlife ramble is where we're at, and I like that. Okay, so we have a lot to talk about today. The main educational part of this video is going to be about what we know about why our body changes on a physiological level during menopause. And over the next few weeks, I'm going to dig deeper into this, and I'm going to end up talking about the nutritional changes that may be needed for a menopausal woman, and they're not as crazy as you think. Hopefully you know that by now after following me. But you want to know first of all why our bodies are changing, and so we're going to do that just later on in this episode. But first of all, if you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, thank you for coming back. I've been getting some really great feedback. I completely appreciate your input into this. I think this is something that I will definitely keep doing because it's a very easy thing for me to do, and it's just a platform that I enjoy because I can ramble, and you know that I like to chitter-chatter. My name is Amanda. I'm a fitness coach, nutrition coach, and I'm also the best-selling author of the book Menopocalypse, How I Learned to Thrive During Menopause and How You Can Too. And I have to say, this book has legs. It came out 2.5 years ago and it's still in the top 10 of the menopause bestsellers. So thank you to everybody who supported me. I'm coming at you from Toronto, where I live. I'm clearly British, but I live in Toronto with my husband, 2 kids, no pets, in a rented house because we can't find anywhere to buy yet. It's not as cold as you think it is here. We're having the craziest weather at the moment. We had a big snow dump last week, but then it went. But I've still put the fire on because any excuse. And I typically join you with a nice cup of tea, but today I'm drinking a ginger kombucha. This is not whiskey. It's not whiskey and ginger, but it's ginger kombucha, and I don't drink kombucha thinking it's some magical drink that's going to heal my gut or help with the microbiome. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but I just absolutely love the flavour. I love ginger so that it's really strong and sort of burny, and ginger ale and all of those don't do it for me, so I drink this. It's also got like 30 calories in for like 1,000 litres. There's nothing in it, so now and again I treat myself, and I always put it in a fancy glass because then it just makes it feel a bit more exotic to me. So I'll be drinking this during the show today. So if you're interested in learning more about the work I'm doing, you can sign up for my newsletter. The information on that is below. I try and send that out as infrequently as possible, probably once or twice a month tops. Also, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Everything that I do on the daily is on there. And this week I've posted another workout, and I've been given my workouts these really fun, empowering names of days gone by maybe that I think need resurrecting and that remind us of the powerful women before us. And so already in the series I have 3 workouts. We have Mildred, we have Doris, who's named after my funny cute little firecracker of a nana, R.I.P. Nana, and Clara, which was released yesterday. So they're on my YouTube, and I just did a little competition today to see if I could find a name for this series, and I was going to give a free signed copy of my book to anyone that came up with a great name for this series. But I think I've already decided I'm going to call it the Matriarch series, unless someone comes up with a better name. So therefore I'll be gifting myself a signed copy of my own book for my genius. So there's that. Anyway, so if you're interested in the Matriarch series, that's in the playlist on my channel. And so anything that I post on Instagram that's a workout based, I then put on my YouTube channel because it's just an easier place for people to go back to. And these workouts have been getting lots of thumbs up because, you know, sometimes it's just difficult to motivate yourself to work out, and these are very easy to do. Well, no, they're not easy to do, but the exercises aren't crazy. They're manageable and they're modifiable. So head on over and check those out. Another little bit of admin-y stuff is I contributed to a new certification called the Menopause Health and Fitness Specialist. It's a certification that's been created by a company called MedFit, where they try and sort of bridge the gap between the medical community and personal trainers, because we often work together with doctors and coaches and other healthcare professionals. And I contributed a tiny bit to this course, I mean a tiny bit, but I'm also getting the opportunity to do the course for free because of my contribution, and I'm loving it so far. Like, it's deep and it's meaningful, and it's down to, we're talking about things about menopause down to the cellular level. So even though I wrote a book about menopause and it's literally all I talk about, I'm learning and learning and learning, and I just love that. So if anybody is interested in that course, you have to be a fitness professional to do this, or have some type of a designation that shows that you do work either in an academic capacity or a training capacity to qualify to be able to do this course. But it's a very solid certification that I highly recommend. It's got 5 modules. It takes 13 hours. I've already probably done 13 hours on this already, and I've still got 2 modules to go because I'm going over it and over it again. So that's the type of detailed level it's at. So if you've got any questions about that, just pop them in the comments below. I also am going to link to an Instagram post I did with the person who created the course, Dr. Carla, and she and I discussed this, and so a ton of your questions will be answered there. So we discussed what the different modules are, what our scope of practice is after we've done the certification. So yeah, I'll also link that down below, so if you're interested, head there. Okay. To the meat and bones of today's topic, I'm going to talk about a chapter that I wrote in my book, and I called it "Why Am I So Bloody Fat?" Right? So obviously this is my book. I'm sure you all know this. And I wrote this chapter because, you know, I, like you, am one of those women that went through menopause and put weight on and didn't understand why, and felt like it was unfair after all of the time, effort and consistency that I'd put into taking care of my health, and it seemed like nothing I could do could change the outcome of me putting on weight, and I felt like menopause was to blame. And what's really interesting about that is that when I started doing the research on my book about why we put weight on in menopause, how a lot of the reasons we put weight on isn't down to menopause specifically, but down to the impact that menopause has on our lives. And there's a nuance there. And when we start to sort of understand what's happening with our body, we can then start working with the change. And so, yeah, I think I put on like 10, maybe 12 pounds. And for some people, you might just be rolling your eyes going, oh, Amanda, you've no idea what it's like to put weight on. But for me, that was significant, and I didn't like it, and I was frustrated. And so honestly, I had to sit down and I'd have a really hard conversation with myself and sort of say, well, is this all menopause fault, or can you have, you know, some personal responsibility in the conversation? Now, before we go on with this one, I full on want to say right now, I never blame or shame anybody if their body has, you know, changed, put weight on. I also don't throw personal responsibility back at you, because that's not helpful. What I do like to do though is give you the information that we know, and then with that you can determine what choices you make and what you want to do, what course of action. Okay, so all that said, let's ask the question, why am I so bloody fat? First of all, the statistics aren't great. So according to the International Menopause Society, 9 out of 10 American women who go through menopause will gain weight, and worldwide that's about 70%. And it's not just about gaining weight. What we do know is that from a physiological level, our fat distribution changes. So some women may not put weight on, but they'll see that their body completely changes, where women typically, not always, but typically will store weight around their tummy and their thighs and their bum. What happens during the menopause transition or perimenopause is that we see that weight distribution changes to our stomachs, sort of moving from the pear to the apple shape. And so somebody who previously never stored fat around their stomach will see that now. And unfortunately, because that's what's happening, that's when we see targets from these companies telling us we can burnish our belly fat. It's pretty toxic, and the products don't work, first of all. But I'm telling you that this is a physiological process that is going to happen. So immediately right there, I'm saying to you, you know this is going to happen, right? So there, that's it. But how can I make sure that if I know I'm going to store belly fat, that I don't store too much belly fat, because unfortunately that then starts to be stored as visceral fat. Let's talk about what visceral fat is. Adipose tissue is our fat tissue. We can talk about it in two streams. We've got subcutaneous fat. Subcutaneous fat is the walls that we can get hold of, the bits that we can shake and jiggle about. Visceral fat is the fat that we can't see, and it covers and surrounds our organs. It's the visceral fat that we have to be concerned about. But you can't spot reduce, right? You can't just say, well, I'm going to lose weight and I'm going to lose visceral fat. That's not how it works. We do know there are some mechanisms that help redistribute fat from the belly area. So for example, there are studies that show that focusing on cardiovascular exercise can actually reduce the incidence of visceral fat in our belly area. It doesn't mean you lose fat, it redistributes. But we know that that's part of the conversation. But if you need to lose actual weight, actual body fat, that has to be done from a nutritional standpoint. But it's why we talk about exercise nutrition in the same breath. We can change our body composition through strength training and some cardiovascular exercise too. And we can lose weight through our nutritional choices. So there are a number of obstacles in our way. So it's not just as easy as saying, make better choices with your diet, eat less calories. It's not as easy as that, and I completely acknowledge that. So let's dig a little deeper into that. First of all, we need to talk about the fact that, one, I've already explained to you that our bodies are going to change shape. The second thing is our response to other hormones in our body. When we see our estrogen declining, it has an impact, a cascading impact on other vital hormones in our body. Two of those vital hormones are insulin and cortisol. So what's the connection there? Well, as we go through menopause, we don't have that protective factor of estrogen, and we know that that impacts us from our sensitivity to insulin. Now, insulin is a super important hormone. In fact, people with diabetes 1, when their pancreas doesn't create insulin, that can be deadly for them. That's why they have to take insulin medication. Diabetes 2 is the type of diabetes that's incurred through lifestyle factors. Type 2 diabetes can be reversed, and it can be reversed through stress management, through daily movement, improved sleep, and improved diet. Okay, so it's always the same answers to everything. I mean, whenever you ask me a question, I'm always going to say, well, we need to improve our sleep and our stress levels, and we need to move more, and we need to pay attention to our diet. But the same is true for being having insulin resistance. So essentially, when you're insulin resistant, it means that your body can't use the insulin sufficiently or efficiently, and it can cause us health issues. We want to improve our insulin sensitivity. We want to be able to have our pancreas to release insulin when it's necessary, when we've eaten a carbohydrate, and we need it to use that to shuttle that carbohydrate to our muscle stores for us to be able to use as energy in its most simplest term. And now cortisol. So our cortisol is responsible. It's a life-saving hormone, right? It's the fight or flight or freeze phenomena that helps save us in stressful situations. And stress in its short acute form is super important and essential to us. Like exercise, when you exercise, it releases cortisol, and it's stressful, but it's positive stress. It helps us adapt to stress. And by the way, if anybody tells you that exercising makes you gain belly fat, please walk away. It's so inaccurate. In fact, one of the largest studies carried out in the US, called the SWAN study, showed that women that were more active gained less weight. So, cortisol. We release cortisol in stressful situations that can be acute, meaning quick and fleeting, or chronic, that stick with us. It's when we have chronic stresses that we really need to pay attention, because the downfall on our health impact from chronic stress is something that you just don't want to have. Guess how you manage chronic stress? Okay, you need to improve your sleep, and you need to improve your stress, and that can be done through a series of different things like meditation, which doesn't need to be exotic. It can be deep breathing. It can be just taking time for yourself, for reducing your load if that's possible. You know, instead of having a list that's 20 things on your to-do list, maybe just have 3 or 4. I know this is easier said than done. I hear you. We're all busy women with young kids, teenage kids, aging parents, busy careers, and we're juggling all of the time. But you do need to manage your chronic stresses. Walking, exercise, these are all good ways to manage our high cortisol. What happens when we have high cortisol? It can impact our sleep. It can impact our cravings. So high cortisol doesn't equal belly fat every time. And you need to understand the relationship there. Some people who have high chronic stress, like myself, it actually stops me eating. So you can't say that cortisol makes us fat, because some people with high stress lose their appetite completely. What it can do though is it can trigger off food desires. It can make us get the munchies and binge eat. And so having that inability to regulate the food that we're eating through high cortisol is one of the impacts of it. So managing our stresses is pretty bloody important, and a lot of the time that's very difficult in perimenopause when our symptoms are just going crazy. And so one of the things I try and tell women through perimenopause is that a lot of your symptoms can be managed with stress management, because stress makes our symptoms worse, especially things like hot flashes and, you know, vasomotor symptoms of night sweats, etc. And it's just this circle of poor sleep, high stress, poor sleep, high stress, and it just compounds and compounds and compounds. So when I tell you to just calm down, I'm actually saying it to come from a good place. We really want women to know that chronic stresses is very, very impactful. And when you've got high stress, it also impacts our insulin response as well. It's all connected. 2 other really important hormones that you need to know about are our hunger hormones. There's actually a bunch of hunger hormones, but the main 2 players are ghrelin and leptin. And what's really funny is ghrelin sounds like gremlin, and that's what it reminds me of. It's the hunger hormone. It tells you that you're hungry. It's like the grumbling gremlin in your tummy. You know that rumble, rumble, rumble? And you're like, oh my God, I'm so hungry. Well, menopausal women often feel hungry all the time, and leptin is produced from our fat cells, and it sends the neurotransmitter to our brain to tell us that we're satisfied, though, that we've eaten enough. And both of those get disrupted by our declining estrogen. They're intrinsically linked. And so this is when women will say, I'm always hungry and I'm never satisfied. And so while we can't blame menopause specifically, the impact that menopause has on all of these different hormones is impactful. It sees us moving a lot less. We're less active. And that's true of most women, that we don't pay very close attention to the foods we're eating, and that we may be just looking and seeking comfort foods because that's a natural human reaction. So knowing that these are hormones that are sort of impacted through the menopause transition, through perimenopause, it means that you can actually make some lifestyle choices that are going to have a positive outcome. Okay, none of them are easy. All of them require you to do this consistently on rinse and repeat, but they will be helpful. Does that make sense? Can you just let me know in the comments if sort of that is helpful to you? We have hormones, they all interact with one another, they're very dynamic. There's an impact through perimenopause as our estrogen falls and declines, and that shows up with extra high stress, increased appetite, and the decreased ability to understand if we're satisfied. Okay? moving on. Another thing to remember as well is that perimenopause can also impact our guts, right? Now, everybody's talking about gut microbiome, and I don't talk about it. And one of the reasons I don't talk about it is because we just don't know enough about it yet. We really don't. So I never recommend probiotics, even though I'm drinking a kombucha. I'm literally doing it because I really love the flavour and the taste and the sourness. We just don't know enough about probiotics, and you just don't know the quality of the probiotics that you're getting from your food and drinks like kombucha. But I think these foods are tasty and they're enjoyable, and you should include them if you find them enjoyable, right? If you want them in your diet. What we do know though is beneficial is increased fibre. Increased fibre is a prebiotic, and that almost like lays down the foundation to be able to promote good intestinal flora. So unless you're prescribed by your doctor for probiotics for some type of GI distress, the best way to help your guts through perimenopause is to increase your fibre. And it sometimes feels counterintuitive if you're gassy, if you're bloated, to say, well, I'm not going to drink any more water and I'm not going to like eat loads of vegetables because it just makes me fart more. It's actually the reverse is true. If you're struggling with water retention and bloating, you probably do need to drink more fluids, and you probably do need to increase your fibre. And you should do that through food as much as possible, through your complex carbohydrates and grains and your fruits and your vegetables. Now, if you feel like you can't get enough in your diet, and 25 grams to me is achievable, but a lot of people don't get that sort of amount of fibre in their diet, then you can use things like Benefiber, which is a clear white powder that you can mix into water that tastes of nothing, and it's very easy to add, into your daily day. So eat your fibre, and that will help with your guts as well. By the way, most of these things tend to sort of like calm down in menopause. It's like the transition that we go through that really causes us a lot of distress. I also just want to talk to you about the fact that we do gain weight. And I think that there has to be an element of acceptance here. Our bodies are meant to change. Maybe we're meant to put on some extra weight, because most women do. I'm heavier than I was in my 20s. Falling into that comparison trap is something that can be very detrimental to us. And there's a lot of women with body dysmorphia, body image issues that can lead to disordered eating. And I'm very, very careful about how I talk about nutrition, weight gain in menopause, because I don't want to sort of trigger anything in anybody. But I think we decided ages ago that fat on our body is inherently bad, and it's not. So fat, the adipose tissue known as fat, is metabolically active. It produces some hormones. It's actually good to have some fat on our body. It's also produces some estrogen. Some of our estrogen is produced in our fat cells. So we just have to manage the expectations of weight gain through menopause, but also know that clearly if we put too much weight on, that can impact our health outcomes. So I actually don't talk about weight loss very often. You'll see that in my work, because while I want to acknowledge that weight gain through menopause is a known thing, I know that everybody is individual about how they want to talk about it and how they want to approach this. I'd rather talk about positive health outcomes. And so moving more every day, just moving. I'm not even telling you to exercise, just move more, be more active, walk more, run up and down the stairs in the house, anything, move, move, move. Introducing resistance training, which has a very positive impact on our body composition, and can also, both of those things can also help with the redistribution of our visceral fat. Then managing your stresses as much as humanly possible, but maybe consider prioritizing that. Doing your best to improve your sleep, working with sleep hygiene to improve your circadian rhythm, taking therapeutics if you need to, if you're not sleeping, if you're struggling with hot flashes, there are hormonal and non-hormonal options that you can talk to your doctor about. And just let's pause and think about how we talk about our body through this time of life, because every time I hear a woman hating on herself because she's put weight on, I just want to stop her and give her a hug and just say your value is not determined by the size of your body. Okay, that ended on a very serious note, but anyway, so that's why our bodies change. We have these physiological impacts to estrogen declining. Some are within our control and some are outside of our control, and we have to work with those impacts that we can. All right, I'm going to move on now to where I am with all of my crafty stuff and a little bit of an update about what's happening with me, with my work, and my own personal health. So I haven't made a lot of progress on my blue vest. Oh my God, I don't know why. And I wanted to be finished this weekend because I'm actually going away to do a speaking event and I wanted to wear it there. So maybe it'll be done. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but yeah, don't hold your breath. But I have been making these little bluebirds. So I wanted to show you what the bluebird looked like when it was flat. And it's such a cute little thing. So this is the bluebird. It's so cute. And how it's constructed is like this. You start here, I cast it on here, and you knit the whole body. You knit the whole body with some increases here and then decreases, and you can see that the end is left open. That's actually where I stuff the stuffing in. After you've made the body, you then cast on the neck, and then you do a little increase and then a decrease. And it's a super cool construction. Anyway, I knit these two yesterday and I just did them while I was watching the telly, and this is what they look like when you stuff them. And I just love them. I love them, love them, love them. One of my friends is having a bit of a rough time. Don't need to say much more than that because we all get it. So I got these little cardboard tags that I put them, and I'm gonna thread a little blue thread through which they can cut. I'm gonna hang it on her front door. A little bluebird of happiness for her. And so yeah, so I've just been popping these out, and I ended up buying some really cheap royal blue yarn because I didn't want to use my alpaca wool and then hang it outside. So I'm keeping that alpaca wool, baby alpaca wool, for myself. So anyway, this is where I am with this. In a few episodes ago, I talked about potentially knitting a shawl. So do you remember these socks? These are the socks I knitted for my husband, and they're with some wool from Norway that was supposed to mimic the Aurora Borealis. And I bought too much and I had a whole ball of wool left over, and I decided I was going to knit this shawl. And I thought, oh, that looks so nice. And this is the yarn. And you can see it's just so pretty, the colours of it. And you don't know how it's going to knit up. It just knits. So I started it last night and I'm already regretting it. And so now I'm in a dilemma. So this is the start of the shawl, and it starts tiny and then it expands out, and then it gets narrow again. So you can make it as long or as short as you want. And it's got this diamond pattern. It's like a holy pattern, and it never looks as good when you see it on the needle because it needs to be blocked and pulled into shape. But I started it last night and I'm not enjoying it. Oh, it's just too fiddly. Now, I know knitting is a really slow hobby, and that's actually one of the reasons I like doing it. It slows me down, it calms me down. But this one, I couldn't do anything else while I was knitting. I had to be completely focused on the pattern in hand. And then I just was like, but the thing is, I have to do this pattern here all the way through. So now I'm thinking of, should I pull it out? Should I continue? I can't decide what to do. It only took me about an hour to do this much, so it's going to take me forever to finish the whole scarf. So I don't know. What do you think? Anyway, I'm literally workshopping my dilemma with you. I can't decide. Maybe I'll have a look and see if there's something that's a little bit less intricate. Because I do like the idea of this being a shawl that I wear in the summer. I think this would make my eyes pop. These greens and blues always work for me. If you've got the same colour eye as me, you would know that. So anyway, I'll let you know how I get on with that in a week or two. And this is something I made. This is the very first colourwork sweater that I ever knit. Oh, and I love this. Can you see it's got mohair in? And so it's this hand spun mohair, and oh, I love the colours. I just love them. And it's not itchy at all. It's just, I do this all the time. I sit and do this when I wear this. And I deliberately made it like a cropped one. I thought it would be cute to wear a cropped one. So anyway, so I know I can do hard things. I just, I don't know about the lace work. Anyway, so I'll keep you posted about that. Okay, so to finish off, I'm going to give you a little bit of an update. So I won't be doing a midlife ramble next week. You'll have one in 2 weeks, and here's why. So this week I am going to Ottawa, and so if you've listened to any of my other recordings, you know that I'm part of NIA, this healthcare solution that we're trying to pull together. Well, we are going to pull together, and so we're going to have like our board meeting where we pull together our business plan and our roles and our investment and all of those things. And so that's with the team of 5 of us, and we're going to just spend the whole weekend working. And I'm actually going to take my GoPro and my camera and do a little bit of recording of like behind the scenes. And so in 2 weeks you're going to see that, and then as soon as I come back from Ottawa, I'm flying out to St. John's, Newfoundland. I'm doing 3 corporate presentations there, and I'm actually blown away, and I'm blown away because of this. I did a talk for the Newfoundland federal government in St. John's last year, but it was virtual. It was virtual because St. John's is part of Newfoundland and Labrador, and everyone's all over the place, and some people are actually out at sea in the Fisheries and Wildlife Department. So that was online, but sort of St. John's is a small place, and word got around that I do these corporate talks, these educational advocacy talks. And so I'm now doing one for Fortis, for Newfoundland Hydro and Newfoundland Power. Newfoundland Hydro has 3 female executives, the CFO, the CEO and the vice president. These women want to talk about menopause in the workplace. And I think because the CBC has raised the attention of menopause in the recent national documentary that they had on, they had a Q&A, they also had a newspaper article, like people around Canada are paying attention now. And I know I've been doing this for years now, but finally sort of Canada is catching up, and I knew this was going to happen. So what's exciting about me going to St. John's, Newfoundland is that I'm going with a documentary filmmaker. Yes, there's going to be a menopause documentary based in Canada, and I'm going to be in it, so I'm super excited. So you have to follow along. I'm going to take some footage while I'm there. So the documentary, they take maybe a year and a half to come out, but it's definitely happening. It's going to look at menopause from a cultural, from a economic, from a social, political standpoint. It's not just going to be about menopause equals hormones. It's just going to be about our experiences. I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be a really robust program. They're going to focus on my part of the conversation as being someone who struggled, who then sort of like became the advocate for patients, like a patient advocate. And so I'm excited about that. And while I'm there, I'm also having 2 interviews with their national sort of radio station and newspaper. So, oh my God, this is pretty exciting. And the upshot of all of this is that it just raises awareness, and it just makes us more seen. This is going to be our time so that the next generation are all sorted. So that's the reason why I can't do a show next week, because I'm going to be knee deep in all of that, but I am going to film as much as possible. And then, you know, when I do the show the following week, you can see snippets of it. And the last thing, news from my part, is that I also have to go in for a procedure tomorrow. I have to go in for an endoscopy. Now, I have GERD, and I got GERD after I had long COVID, which was 2020. And GERD is like a gastroesophageal reflux disease. So it's literally just acid, but it's progressed, right? And it's something I'll always have. And I've always had like stomach issues, always. I've had H. pylori twice. I had a terrible time while I was pregnant with like chronic diarrhea. It was the worst. So I've always had gut issues. And then after I got long COVID, I struggled with shortness of breath and fatigue. And it turned out I had GERD, and the acid was aspirating into my lungs and making my breath really short. And so I took the PPI medication, omeprazole, and within 2 weeks it had cleared up, and I started feeling healthy again. But they told me I would always have this, and it would have flare-ups, and the flare-ups happen when I don't eat the right foods, because there's some foods that irritate it, like tomatoes, garlic, carbonated drinks, coffee. I can't give my coffee up. I've tried. It's awful. And so anyway, that's been manageable for a couple of years, but then I had a cough last November and December from RSV. I got COVID again. Oh my God, I feel like a COVID sponge. And then it turned into a bacterial infection. So I was treated for the bacterial infection, but I still had this cough and it just wouldn't go. And then I started getting really bad nausea and a pain that goes for this bit here. And it feels like a sore throat, but here. Food would get stuck. I have so much mucus and it regurgitates. You can stop listening if you want, but regurgitation happens and it's really uncomfortable. It makes me feel unwell. It makes me feel tired. I'm probably not absorbing all the nutrients from my food, yada, 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 yada. I'm on the PPIs again and they're not working this time. And it's troublesome. It's stopping me sleeping. I have to sit up in bed. Otherwise, I just start coughing like crazy. So tomorrow I'm going in for an endoscopy just to find out what's going on. I think it's chances are I just have increased inflammation there and maybe the medication needs to be changed. So I'll keep you up to date on that. My kids were like, is that menopause as well? And actually I just think this is the things that we have to put up with. This is like getting older, isn't it? Very, very frustrating. Is there anybody else struggled with GERD on here? Anyone else had these type of issues? I know my friend Kim Schlag also had long COVID and also got GERD after it. And I think maybe if you've got a predisposition for it, maybe the inflammation from having COVID maybe made it worse. I don't know. I'm just guessing. And obviously I'm not an expert, but I'm an expert in my own health in the fact that I feel like shit and I want this sorted. So anyway, I'll keep you posted. And so that's it. So I've got a busy couple of weeks coming up. Thank you for sitting by and letting me chitter chatter away. I'm still looking at this knitting going, oh, I don't know what to do. I mean, if these are the type of problems I have, then I'm lucky, right? Because that's literally the worst thing that's preying on my mind right now. I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Please leave a comment. I read all your comments and I just love them. I really like it. Please share with your friends. Subscribe, like, and hit the little bell thing so that you get to hear when new episodes go up. And yeah, I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks again for joining me. Take care. Bye.